lot of familiar faces in front of me. I mean, not all of them, but at least one. Spencer, nice to see you. And good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. I will go over the one important pillar of the fuel schemes, which is in-flight fuel management policy. Spencer, if you allow me, I would like to use you as a silly meter. Okay, so if you nod your head, that means that I'm going on the right track. If you shake your head, I guess that I'm saying something silly. So keep your video on, please. Let's go to the first slide. So this is a picture taken from the ICAO document 9976, which was the primary reference of our rulemaking task when we approached the new fuel requirements. As you can see, the proactive in-flight fuel management is one of the pillars. And today we will go over this part, and also we'll touch on the preemptive flight crew actions to protect the final reserve fuel. This is, of course, an important element as well, and the remaining one is, which is the accurate and predictive flight planning, is also very important, as all of the three elements all together, they make a robust fuel policy. One without the other is probably not going to work. The regulatory framework is on the in-flight fuel management is as it is on the slide. So we have one implementing rule, 3 AMCs for the procedures for the different schemes, and then a guidance material which covered the data recording, the delay information, the minimum fuel, and the final reserve protection. Again, this ICAO document, which by the way was one of the best that ICAO produced, in my opinion, is a very good reference also to dive into the policy, and also for the operators when they need to draft their own. Let's start with this implementing rule. So what is important is that we see this in-flight fuel management as a, let's say, Deming's wheel. So we plan something, and then we go on flights and we depart, and we need to continuously validate the planning assumptions. And then if something goes wrong, then we correct. One important pillar of the validations of the assumptions is the possibility for the flight crew to receive reliable delay information which were not known at planning stage. Those that were known at planning stage, they should be covered by the extra fuel. So this is one of the changes that we introduced by naming the extra fuel and allocating the extra fuel to that purpose, and renaming the former extra fuel into discretionary fuel for the commander. So here the GM1 to cut off MPA 185 covers the integrity, the availability, the accuracy, and the continuity of the service that is to be provided to the flight crew with regard to the provision of delay information. Then the crew adjusts the profile if needed, and then there is an element of the implementing rule that calls for the protection of the final reserve for a safe landing. And we will go over in the next slide what a safe landing means. There is an element also on the periodic recording of fuel-related data. That is also important. We'll have a slide on that. And of course, if something goes south, we have to inform the ATC of the issues we are experiencing. So we have a minimum fuel declaration, and we have a Mayday fuel if really we are expected to breach the final reserve when we land. Both of them are safety performance indicators, and the Mayday fuel is also a mandatory occurrence report, like Francisco mentioned before. These safety performance indicators are very important if an operator wants to go into the individual fuel scheme, of course. On the recording fuel-related data, the MC1 calls for the flight crew to perform in-flight fuel checks. point alpha 3 addresses the recording of such data, so there is a list. And the operator should agree with the competent authority in what constitutes this relevant data. And this data is used as a SPI for performance measurement. The GM provides guidance on the frequency of this in-flight fluid check and what should be considered as relevant to be recorded. And here we have the 30 minutes for short range, 60 for long. And of course, it's a guidance material, so the operator can of course agree with the authority otherwise. Then there is a list of few relevant data that should be recorded. For instance, there are key points like departing, so block off, takeoff, landing, block on and arrival, minimum fuel, and Mayday declarations. And here, what is important is that ACARS provide for this automatic recording, so relieving the flight crew from taking this data. And nowadays, we see a lot of digitalized, fully digitalized cockpits where the FB does it all together with the ACARS and other CPDLC recording, whatever. So we should see, say, the crew less engaged in recording, but more in analyzing the data. As I said before, safe landing and adequate aerodromes are used in the context of the fuel policy. A safe landing is basically you land at an aerodrome that the operator has already surveyed and in compliance with the normal procedures, operational procedures, which also include landing with non-normal situations, but actually you don't breach any operational rule. Whereas, and the adequate aerodrome, of course, is the one for which the operator has taken into account the performance requirements, runway characteristics. I mean, you probably have a full understanding of adequate aerodrome and suitable aerodrome as a subsequent step, let's say, in the planning stage. But for the safe landing is basically the protection of the final reserve is to ensure that you can do a safe landing, you can perform a safe landing with at final reserve or above in terms of fuel level. The minimum fuel declaration is also an important pillar of this in-flight fuel management policy. It needs to be clearly understood by the flight crew. What it means actually is you are committed to land a specific aerodrome, and any change to the existing clearance may result in landing with less than the final reserve. It's important that the crew understands there's only one safe landing option remaining. So you're not in a Mayday situation, but you are, let's say, just with one safe landing option. And the crew needs to consider the operational factors that may cause the delay to landing. And the crew must be aware that there is no priority handling. It's just an awareness to the ATC for their planning, the stacks in holding or sequencing the time of arrivals. So you will not get any special treatment, let's say, from the ATC. There are some scenarios provided in GM addressing three different situations. The flight is diverting to an alternate. Another scenario is in holding a destination, and then another one is approaching destination with no alternate. And those scenarios are taken from basically the 9976 takeout document and should help also in training the staff, the flight crew. On the final reserve protection, the basic elements are that the basic objective is that you ensure that the safe landing is made in an aerodrome where unforeseen circumstances may not allow to safely complete the flight as originally planned. So this is the objective. Consideration is that the first consideration should be that the crew should protect the final reserve and as much as possible perform a safe landing, so adequate aerodrome without breaching any operational limitations or SOPs. If this is not possible, then the crew should declare a fuel emergency, Mayday, Mayday, Mayday fuel, and any landing option should be explored. And here we gave some information in the guidance material related to which runways are we considering. And of course, you breach the operational procedures In order to do that, you may, and the safest option is, of course, to put the aircraft on the ground, and then you'll have to fill a lot of paperwork, of course, to justify, which probably is the hardest part. The Mayday fuel declaration is, of course, where you the calculated landing fuel at the nearest aerodrome where safe landing can be made is less than final reserve. So it's not when you actually breach the final reserve in the totalizer, but actually when you expect that the landing is performed with less than the fuel. And it is a standardized phraseology as per PANS ATM, and it provides the clearest and most urgent expression of emergency situation. So this is triggers a lot of actions, immediate actions by the piloting command and the ATC to ensure that the flight can land as soon as possible. Definitely, you get the priority handling. I have some concluding remarks. Also, I hope that I stay in time here. The in-flight fuel management is part of a bigger operator fuel scheme, so it cannot be seen or taught in isolation. It requires investment in resources from the operator, human resources, aircraft equipment, tools, and last but not least, personnel training. In-flight fuel management ensures that planning assumptions are continually validated with the main objective to protect the final reserve. So it's a continuous effort. Of course, you don't do this every second of the flight, but the recurrent flight checks and normal airmanship provide this robust framework in which the flight crew operates and manages the fuel. Does not replace accurate pre-flight planning or in-flight replanning. You cannot actually disregard the planning phase as an operator and just put everything on the flight crew to say, well, then you manage. Okay? Yeah, this is not acceptable. Having said that, of course, in flight fuel management, the most important thing is not the fuel, the amount of fuel that you depart with, but the one with you land. And my personal experience is that sometimes the biggest troubles happen when you have a lot of fuel and then you maybe you put a lot of extra or discretionary fuel, and then you put your mindset, you have this mindset that you commit to destination, and maybe you will be the last one to leave the holding stack diverting, and then you have no more parking available to divert. So sometimes this confidence that you may have in having more fuel when you depart is not actually helping you out in flight fuel management. It's a joint effort, definitely, of flight crew and operational control personnel. The more you go into the individual fuel scheme with the more accurate, refined fuel quantities, the more this teamwork is important. And you need to apply it in a just culture environment, where if a pilot one day makes a mistake in a diversion, he's not actually hit because he commercially disappointed the CEO. Definitely, in-flight fuel management, especially for the most, let's say, performing fuel schemes, must be implemented or should be implemented by a resilient flight crew. And of course, everybody now knows that this equation, that the resilience is confidence and times competence. So the operator is responsible to work on both sides, to train the crews and the operational control personnel, but also give them the confidence that they can deliver in challenging environments like the one we are experiencing today. That's pretty much it for my side. I didn't see Spencer shaking his head too many times, so city meter was okay. Back to you.
Thank you, Francesco. Thank you very much. So we're going to go now to the questions. For some time, the survey is being open. We will continue the survey later on after the Q&A. I think we have more than 20, 25 people already fill out the survey, so thank you very much. We will continue again with the survey just after the session that we're going to have now. We're going to have now a session of Q&A, questions and answers applicable to us, especially to the authority. John, just to make sure that the Q&A is now open for...
It is.
It is, okay. So, okay, I'm going to stop.
Stop sharing.
Yeah, sorry, I'm gonna undo the changes. Sorry, guys. Now you can see me better. Okay, I'm gonna open. So just give me 2 minutes to open the Q&As, and then we will kick in. 1 second.
I can share the.
Okay.
I can share it on the screen here.
Okay, I see in the chat some questions and also in the Q&A as well. So
Stephen.
So from Stephen, and I see that there's other questions as well in the chat, but we will, please guys, I know that the Q&A wasn't open and available for you guys, but please, whenever you can, your questions, please submit it in the Q&A now that the Q&A is open for you. So applicable, if below applicable landing minima applicable in GM2 cutoff PMP 185 refers only to the wind condition, but not to the visibility ceiling minima. So that's applicable.
There's no GM.
Yeah, there's no GM2. There's I think there's a GM.
Maybe it's not 185. No?
Maybe I don't know if Stefan is available, and we can give him the floor to explain his.
Let me just quickly. I can find him and hook him out. What's his name again?
Stephen Boland.
Yep.
So yeah, Stephen, we're gonna give you the floor to ask your question. You are live. There's much more than 250 people. Just to let. So please, Stefan, go ahead.
Yeah, it's fine. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Excellent. I've taken that from the easy access rules for air operation, revision 18. And this table lists dedicated requirements for ETOPS and route alternatives, for example. And in the fifth column, there is just said applicable only if below landing minima. And we discussed it internally. And our assumption was that it's only regarding to the wind conditions, but not to ceiling and visibility. Is that right?
Okay, give me 1 second because I think I got it. It's not exactly that rule reference, but let me share with you my screen.
It's a table of NC3 to cut off PPA.
On page 927.
Is it correct?
Yeah, it's on page 927.
The thing is that revision 18 is an old one. We have a newer one, I believe.
Yeah, correct. We are in revision 20, it's December 2022. I guess you are talking about this one.
Exactly.
Sorry, 19. Yes, revision.
To the left. Yeah, exactly.
December 2022. You got it. So I guess you are referring to this table, AMC3, and you, to be more precise, you are referring to here, no? Applicable if below applicable landing minimum. Yeah. Correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and you are and this is referring to the tempo, etc. So that means that if your applicable landing minima, so let's say you are expecting an en route alternate and there's a Cat 1 aerodrome. So if the weather is going to be below the applicable landing minima, so a Cat 1, 550 and 220 feet, then let me check ETOPS alternate. Then it should be, you should take into account and this tempo and Prof 30 and 40 will be applicable to you. while a Prop 30 and Prop 40 normally is disregarded in other let's say destination or in other places. It could be disregarded. In here, for this particular matter, is applicable, no, Francesco?
Yes. For persistent conditions.
Yeah, and for persistent conditions.
So,
Yeah, one thing that we need to say to our colleagues from EU rules, that they need to put this table, horizontally, because then it's difficult to read otherwise. So it is clear for you, Stefan, now?
Not really. So we were discussing if that only applies to wind conditions, so that they have to be applicable, and within the limits, also the visibility and the ceiling.
Okay, give me 1 second.
Because this table is mainly dealing with wind conditions, not with ceiling and visibility.
Okay.
As you see in paragraph 2 on the top, on the top of the table, there's this remark number 2,
Yeah.
application of forecast. This is dealing only with wind conditions.
Francisco, may I
Go ahead, Peter.
at least what I can say from our part is how we do it. So we don't apply this only to the wind limitations, and we apply it actually to ceiling and visibility as well. The part that refers to ETOPS, as far as we understand it, is that we have to make sure one thing is the planning minima for an ETOPS aerodrome, because this refers only to an ETOPS aerodrome. And you have the planning minima, which is then obviously the landing minima plus the add-on of the precision or non-precision approach, depending on what you're planning on. And how we interpret this rule is that if it is a tempo, a Prop 30, Prop 40 standing alone group, if the weather is below the landing minima, which would be the, let's call it the pure Cat 1 approach, 200 feet, 550 meters, then we would obviously take it into account. Wind limitations always needs to be considered. If it is below the planning minima, but above the landing minima, we can disregard this group. This is how we deal with this table. I don't know if that helps you a little bit.
Yeah, and Thomas, are you there? How you apply this point? If you can answer, because I mean it's completely unprepared.
Just supporting what Peter said. It's for us it's the same thing. So there's this gap between the planning minima and let's say 400 feet, and then the bare approach minimum of 200 feet, and this is this gap we're talking about, considering visibility and ceiling. And that has nothing to do with the wind. Especially here at the ETOPS, we see that the wind itself is treated in a separate box. So there's a box for the weather, for the wind, and the other one is, what we do is use it for the visibility and the ceiling. And actually, we, the differentiation, I wouldn't agree with what Stefan said, that the whole table is about wind. I would say that for every box, there is one line for visibility and ceiling, and then a specific mentioning how to deal with mean winds or gusts. That's the way we would do it.
Thank you very much, because we were saying, very low, not very loudly here, that it was that approach. But final one, I don't know if Spencer, you agree with all of what we have said, correct?
I do agree with that, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, one thing, guys, that maybe in the SPT 097 that I will introduce later on, maybe is something that we need to consider. First of all, I will tell our colleagues from rules that it is to be horizontal, this table. And secondly, I think maybe we can deal in the future fuel schemes manual, the manual on fuel. Then we could address this matter and clarify this point. So thank you very much. Back to you for the next question, John.
Okay. Okay, so the next one is regarding GM1 CAT OPA MPA 185. If agreed with the competent authority to do fuel checks between 60 and 90 minutes, i.e. over Canada with waypoint spaced more than 60 minutes.
So yeah, I'm gonna give the floor to Francesco. I mean, he just explained the GM, but so
Yeah.
your floor.
Yes. The reason that 30 minutes and 60 minutes were in the guidance material is because we want to give some let's say basic guidance to the operator and the authority to start the discussions and then finally agree on what makes sense for the operator, and it is accepted, approved by the authority when approving the overall fuel scheme. So if that 90 minutes on certain geographical areas or operation sectors is deemed appropriate for the operator fuel scheme, then the authority will approve it, and I see no problem in refusing such proposal.
And remember, guys, that we are introducing as automatic references. Let's say, like for example, for takeoff and landing. I know that Jaime in Iberia, they take some due to the statistical contingency fuel. They measure the automatically the takeoff fuel and the landing fuel, and then that's why the old regulation required those points, those provisions were at the implementing rule and AMC level, while in the new regulation is at GM level. The reason for that is to allow more flexibility and, as appropriate, record those 60 minutes or 30 minutes or 90 minutes, whatever is appropriate. A different thing is that the pilot needs to be always aware of the fuel quantity and the situation with the fuel. Another thing is the recording. Yeah? So one thing is for the authority and for auditing purposes, let's say, and the other one is how aware is the pilot, but that doesn't require a specific recording all the time. So Francisco Molina, if you have any other questions or we didn't clarify correctly, please write us in the chat or reissue the question again, and we will be able to answer. We're gonna take one last one, which is this one from Stavros, and then we have again 1 hour. So Valerio, your question is for next, and hopefully you will have more thumbs up. Can we apply for both basic fuel schemes and basic scheme with variation? The implementing rule is asking either or. So yes, you can apply for both things. You can have and combine, for example, as Peter will explain later, you can combine an AMC 9 and CAT OP MPA 182 with a very lean aerodrome selection. And, for contingency purposes or for some other reasons, take the AMC 6 CAT OP MPA 182. You can do this as well with the contingency, and we will have a presentation from Jaime using different ones. You can use the basic with 5% while using the 3% and then using the other contingency fuel. So yes, you can apply to both things. And with this, we need to stop because we need to go for a break. We will continue with the questions later on. We will maintain the questions Q&A for some time, and then we will reopen again later on the survey.
So Q&A open during the break, and then start the survey again.
Yeah,
the next presentation's on.
Correct. So as soon as so the break, please type your questions, and then when we start again with the industry session or block, we will reissue again or reactivate the survey. We have like 20-25 people in the survey already answered. So thank you very much. But we hope we can have much more during this webinar. So thank you very much. And we're going to break until past 10. 2:10, we will resume back operations. Thank you very much. Welcome back to the webinar. We're going to continue now to the block on the industry. Before starting the industry part, let me go back to the agenda. So we're going to have a presentation from ALLG on the research program. Then we will have a Tui presenting the next part. And then finally, we're going to have Iberia. So give me 1 second. So Nuria, I don't know if you can start presenting while I give the introduction. So please start trying to sharing. I don't know if you hear me. Can you hear us? Yes, no? Yeah, correct. So Nuria Alsina is the person that will make the presentation. She's the leader of the digital transformation practice at ALG, this research program that I referred to before. She has more than 12 years of experience in aviation consulting, and she's the project manager of this particular point. Nuria, I don't know if you can hear me. Your presentation looks good, so the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you, Francisco, for this introduction, and thanks everyone to give us this brief space to present our project. Very briefly to contextualize, for those who do not know ALG, we are a consulting company focused on transportation, and in particularly the people here together with me in this meeting room, we are part of the digital department focused on aviation, where we produce projects from supporting in the definition of digital strategy for companies until the final deployment or development of particular artificial intelligence algorithms and business intelligence capabilities for the company. And why are we here? Because we are helping EASA on this research project called Data App that links digital technologies with regulation. Why so? Basically because digital technologies have accelerated its path towards implementation very quickly, and sometimes, as from a business perspective, it's very hard for us to keep with the pace of those developments. Particularly thinking on the aviation industry, which is very safety critical activities have to take place. So what do we want to research? We want to help in this process, trying to investigate in different digital tools that can help us enhance or overcome some of the challenges that we have right now as an industry. Particularly, how can they help improve our operations, make them more efficient, help us with reducing this environmental impact, with some cost reductions of the operations, etc., etc. And finally, link it with particular actions from the regulatory perspective. How can the regulatory aspects streamline or foster the implementation of these solutions? Okay, so we want to try to bridge this gap between the digital world and the regulations in aviation passing through the improved operations. And as aviation is very wide, we could spend many years thinking of all digital solutions that can help in every aspect in aviation. We will focus on 3 main fields. The first one deals with flight training and operations data usage for evidence-based training and capacity-based training. Then we will also focus on flight data models for safety, and particularly how can we make use of flight data for safety purposes other than flight data monitoring programs, and also focusing on potentially industry-wide programs that can heavily enhance and help in reaching positive outcomes. And finally, and why we are here is because we are also tackling the digital fuel management perspective. So how can we transition to these new fuel management schemes that we are discussing this, and how can digital tools help us in this process? How will we approach this problem? Very typical research project, a first phase where we will define the case study, basically a hard work on literature review to understand the state of the art and the key limitations and challenges that we want to face. Then the development of the pure case study, where we will investigate the different options that we have an impact assessment on those, etc., etc. And finally, the review on and this link with the regulatory materials and their standards. So which of these actions can be taken place on the regulatory side or the standards to foster this implementation of solutions. Right now, we started the project a couple of months ago, and we have concluded this initial state-of-the-art review, where we performed a very in-depth review of the regulatory framework to gather this insight of where we stand in terms of regulation in this aspect. Then we also did a research on the potential digital capabilities that we could identify, particularly for fuel management in the industry. We have different ones here, such as advanced fuel management system, other systems to predict and monitor operational conditions, as well as contextualizing information from the operations, etc., etc. And finally, the last part is where we identify these main challenges for implementation of these digital capabilities. And here we could summarize it into 4 main blocks. The first one would be this lack of standards regarding what's the data collection and management. So there's lacks a lot of guidance so that each organization doesn't need to start from scratch. So right now we have a blank page when you want to start on that aspects. The same on mechanisms to adopt an ecosystem of digital solutions. So we are still in that area where we work very silo-based. And so we have independent solutions to deal with different topics. And at the end, this process needs to join different perspectives. Fuel on one hand, operating conditions on the other one, that deals with delays, weather, etc., etc. So we need to build this ecosystem of digital solutions. Then we are also missing some guidelines in terms of safety and performance indicators definitions. So yes, in the regulatory, we hear about SPIs, we hear about indicators. Some of them are mentioned even, but we always stay in a very high level, and we need to bridge this gap between this initial nomenclature, very high level, into how are we actually computing these indicators and monitoring them. And finally, also going back to the fact that we are dealing with data from different environments, we need to fuse this data to be able to contextualize one flight. So we need to see for the same flight, the weather conditions that apply, the delays that affected that flight, how the fuel evolved during the flight, and that means fusing data from multiple sources. And there's also the industry is in an incipient status for those capabilities that will be key for the adoption of such fuel management schemes. So this is the conclusions that we've reached so far. And going further, we want to tailor this to and focus into 3 main use cases, focused on each of the data layers that we are required for fuel management. Okay? The first one, we will deal with a use case focused on investigating fuel data per se, so leveraging on aircraft-specific fuel data to implement such schemes. The second one, we will focus on this characterization of the safety performance indicators. As I mentioned, we are in an industry where you all know safety is first. So it was worth having one use case only focused on investigating and researching more this particular aspect. And finally, another use case supporting the research on using operating conditions data to support this fuel management schemes. Okay? In this regard, even though we are treating each data as a silo in a different use case, we will always keep an eye open for these fusion capabilities to make sure that we do not miss that part that was also identified as a key limitation at the very beginning. Okay, and why are we here basically presenting this? Because most of you who is in this webinar are at the forefront of fuel management, and we need at the end to better understand your problems, your challenges, so that the results from our research project are actually useful for the community. Okay, and for that we need to have you on board, particularly in the second phase that we will enter now, that is the use case development. So here we want to go from the problem that we have identified and to the final solution, investigating, always thinking on the usage of data. So investigating different limitations, why we have these limitations, how can we solve, which solutions can help us in this process, and for that we need your inputs. How do we plan to engage with you? This webinar is a first step, but then we plan to have bilateral interviews with a part of the audience and other stakeholders to better understand exactly your current processes and the limitations that you face in terms of the usage of data. With that, we will try to generalize into a global picture. So we do not want to be organization specific, but try to have and tackle generic problems from all stakeholders. And with that, we plan to have a first technical workshop with a wider audience to share these initial outcomes that we have found from these bilateral interviews, refine them, and get this final picture of, okay, these are the actual limitations that the industry is facing. Then we will start thinking and refreshing on the potential solutions that we have to these limitations, and to gather the opinion of the wider audience there, we will launch some open stakeholder consultations through different questionnaires that we will share via different channels, such as email, social networks, etc., where we want to gather the feedback on these potential solutions and evaluate their impact into the operations. And finally, we will recap all this into a second technical workshop to validate these initial results that we have obtained, these ideas on potential solutions, and particularly to conclude on the impact that these solutions will have. In parallel to all these activities, we'll keep on participating on these webinars such as this one to keep gathering the insights on these processes, challenges, etc., that are very much shared within the community here. And as well, we will be producing the different project deliverables, and we will pass them to review to a certain amount of experts to make sure that we keep very much aligned with the actual problems from the industry. Okay, so that's why I was at the very beginning encouraging you all to answer the survey that we shared within this webinar to start capturing this initial state of the art. And as well, particularly on question 7, if you are up to help us for such interviews and participation on those workshops, please leave your contact details there. As Francisco has mentioned, we will manage personal information carefully and in line with EASA rules. But it's a way of having you on board in the list of potential stakeholders and invite you in this workshop and keep you up to date with the research. And basically, your opinion will be fed into our final deliverables and recommendations for actions on the regulations related to fuel management. And that is all. Thank you very much for your attention. I will be more than happy to handle questions in the Q&A session if there's any.
Thank you, Nuria. Thank you, ALG Group. And we're going to continue with the next presentation on Tui Fly. Just a reminder to all the participants, we open again the survey. So please, we have 23 people already fill out the survey. So please, we need more people, please. I know that it's been closed for some time now because we were opening the Q&A. But go ahead with this and please, as soon as you can, fill out the survey. I don't know if we could maintain maybe after the webinar a little bit longer the survey, John, and we can keep it a little bit longer. But please, if you can, and then we will have some results at the end of the webinar for you to see the survey. So some preliminary results. So the next presentation is from Tui Fly. Thank you, Peter. We see your presentation. Peter, born in Germany, mother is Spanish, father German. He studied as well in Spain in tourism in Valencia. He has more than 10 years being as a ground handler, and he is trainer, and he was trainer of weight and balance and ground operations. For 11 years, he's been in TUI Group as a flight dispatcher and main trainer in Tui Fly. In fact, he's now in London providing that training to some other parts of the group, moving from Germany to London to provide this training. He's also the vice chair of GALDA, which is an IFALPA member, and he's also in the German flight dispatcher license. He's also a German flight dispatcher license and LBA approved examiner on regards of flight dispatcher. So welcome, Peter. Thank you for having you here, and the floor is yours.
So, muchas gracias por la introducción. So thanks again, John and Francisco, for having me. It's really a pleasure to work with you. Yeah, what is this time about? It is, as you said correctly, basically like an extension to what we had in October, the second webinar, because obviously, as Edward said correctly, we were one of the operators that had the extension period requested, and yeah, we hope so that we used it as best as possible. Just a quick overview of what we're actually doing in the GOC. This is where I work in the TUI Group Operations Center. We have the airline operations basically splitted. The TUI Operations Control Center located in Luton, where we do the ops control, and dispatch and backup functions are done in Hanover, in the TUI Group Operations Center, where actually I'm located in. Right now in Luton, because, as I said correctly, the colleagues in the TOCC will receive or are receiving some training regarding this special topic, and this is what I'm here for. So, where were we when we finished the last time? I have basically the last slide from last time. This was all the timeline that we had until November. We were nearly there, and I think probably would have made it for the 1st of November for the implementation, but when we got the 5 exemption periods, I would rather say we were pretty happy about that, because obviously there were still things to come, not only in our hands, our flight planning service providers as well. We needed to update the system on the new rules, etc., and that was part of the implementation process, obviously. So the challenges that we faced before, they have now clarified, at least some of them. You can see them. This is again a slide from the last one, from the last presentation. Mainly it was a time issue. I remember that it was mentioned in the first webinar as well. In our particular case, we have 5 AOCs, which actually 4 are EASA carrier, 1 is non-EASA carrier. This is a challenge for us. I will come to this later when we talk about the risks that we are encountering right now. So these were the challenges that we had a look at, and we took the time that we had until for these 6 months for the exemption period to basically recheck again where are we at the end of October, and where we actually want to be when the implementation starts. So we sat together with a great team that we actually have, and yeah, and we looked at some parts. So my part obviously was the training part, and we did some changes specifically because we figured that obviously flight monitoring in the concept of the AMCs that we are applying for has a higher importance that probably I would have expected at the initial part. So we swapped from the high relevance for flight crews and dispatch to having operations control personnel as well, and the navigation department with a higher relevance of the whole process of implementation and then application of the new rule settings. Flight monitoring obviously then extended. It is not only in our hands in the GOC and dispatch only. Our colleagues in the TOCC have a crucial role in it. So therefore, then we instead of, which was actually my part then in this case, to decide or to see, shall we go for a CBT training as it was intended for the colleagues, or should we go for a classroom? And we thought it was definitely worth to give it a classroom training, so the colleagues have hopefully a better overview about the upcoming situation that they will face and we will face in Hanover as well. Yes, so we tailored the training sessions for the colleagues, for the crew members, etc., etc. For us in the GOC, I probably mentioned that it was something like a 6 hours training, hands-on training, really practical thing. For the colleagues in the TOCC, it's a little bit less because obviously they don't have to deal with minima and how do I apply a type A, type B approach. And then we got this same training material for the flight crew members as well, which actually already started with the training in, I think it was at the beginning of February. Start the training to be ready. And you will see now the latest timeline that we have now. And this is what we're looking at now. So our implementation date will be this 26th of April. As you can see, we are actually there. All the trainings are done, or partially they will be done. Our flight planning system is set up. It has been running on our test service for quite a long time. The crew interlink, the TUI OFP app, is working properly. And the OMs have been updated and have been sent to the authorities to get an approval, so they will be published then. Right now for information only, and then on the 26th they will be published as temporary revisions or as new handbooks, and for the normal or for the day-by-day work. Obviously, all the AOCs did some risk assessments. What would be the risks of the new implementation? And we as the GOC, we did one as well. This is the next thing that I can briefly give you a little bit information about. Bear in mind that obviously a risk assessment is data protected, so I can just give you ideas of what our thoughts were, what could be possible barriers or risks in flight planning with the new implementation of the fuel rules. So obviously, the change of the alternate planning mile is completely different to what we had before. Many of these topics that you can see here have been either addressed by training, but by hopefully proper training. Changing the mindset of the namings, discretionary fuel, extra fuel, the new extra fuel concept that was already addressed previously, having a specific fuel type for non-normal situations, or actually predictable non-normal situations in our flight operations. Then obviously, since we, if you remember that we have 5 AOCs and 5 different desks, so it is quite challenging because we have one non-EU carrier. So the dispatchers then have to always be aware, what are they doing right now? Are they on an EASA carrier desk, or are they not on an EASA carrier desk, which might be quite challenging, especially for long haul colleagues, because there we don't work specifically with desk. We go more into a geographical direction. So you have like flights that are from a non-EU carrier to non-EASA carrier and the EASA carrier going to the same destination. So the dispatcher will have to be aware that for this flight these rules apply, and for that flight these rules apply. This obviously then put together in a high workload environment that we all know, industrial actions, etc., can lead to mistakes. We were looking at, is the training enough? Do we need to retrain? So actually an outcome of this was that we will do a refresher training at the beginning of April, just as a CBT, but since we started the training basically half a year or more than half a year ago, it just needs to be refreshed. That obviously is then, is the training actually up to date? Is it still what we need, or is it still what we want? Is it according to the actual temporary revisions of the OMs? So this were the possible barriers. And during this 6 months, I've been addressed by some colleagues regarding the implementation of the AMCs, and this might actually answer one of the questions that was addressed in the forum. The applicability of variations and the basic one, and at least what I think it is absolutely necessary in some cases to do so, and I hope I can answer that with 1 or 2 slides. The alternate planning fallback solution, this is what I call it. we, as a TUI group, we are going for AMC 9, which is probably the most restrictive of all the AMCs for the alternate planning, because obviously you need the low-vis approval for the fleet that you're flying, and especially flight monitoring as a requirement. If we look a little bit deep into flight monitoring, it says you have to have the personnel qualified. So we have that tick on that with the training, communication, and obviously the critical assistance for the crew. So we can make the case, very simple case, what if an aircraft has a failure of the communication system? So maybe for us, the communication system in between the OCC or the GOC is ACARS. Only for the long-haul flights, we have SATCOM voice. So the main communication system is ACARS. So how do we communicate with the aircraft or how can we actually fulfill flight monitoring if we cannot communicate with the aircraft? That's basically contradicting the concept of being allowed to have so low minima for your alternate planning. So yeah, it's definitely a challenge. So two options, pretty simple. If you actually if it's for you not possible to plan actually an alternate, you cannot fly. Or if you're not considering alternate options, if the airport would allow, but we can leave this aside for now. But definitely, if you cannot communicate, and you cannot apply the rules that are laid down in AMC 9, aircraft is AOG. Unless, and this is now hopefully the answer, you can apply AMC, or you have approved AMC 6. So in case of flight monitoring not being fulfilled, you have a fallback option that would be then AMC 6, because in this case, AMC 6, as you can see, has no requirement of flight monitoring. It doesn't need a low visibility approval. So obviously the alternate minima are higher. That obviously will then put you in a situation that the alternates might be further away, but definitely you can operate that flight. There was no other option for us to go for as a fallback, because then obviously AMC 8 still has flight monitoring as a requirement. The only difference in between AMC 9 and AMC 8, if I don't remember incorrectly, is that there is no low-vis approval for it required, and that you have a maximum flight time. So we didn't want to make it too complex for the crews and saying, okay, if you want to, especially for the long haul, if you're kind of flying 10 hours, these rules apply. If you're flying on short haul on a 787, these rules apply. So we have AMC 9 for all the fleets. And if something is going wrong, we cannot communicate, or we do not fulfill with flight monitoring, then we can fall back and apply AMC 6. So in regards to the challenges that we faced last year, we're there. We have the most of the approvals of the NAAs. Time obviously is now not a factor anymore, so the deadline is then the 26th of April. Manuals have been done. People has been trained or will be trained until the end, whether it is ops control personnel, dispatchers, or flight crews. And yeah, so we basically kind of looking forward that we can make the tick to it and see how it goes.
Thank you very much, Peter. Again, it was a very interesting presentation. We're going to continue with the agenda, and I want to check with Jaime. I don't know if you are there and you can start sharing your presentation, Jaime.
I was going to stop the polls for a bit now. We've had a few more, but then people can ask questions again.
No, we wait. So yeah, we will keep for the presentation of Jaime. We keep the survey a little bit longer, and just before Jaime finishes his presentation, we will resume with the Q&A, because we have then a break, so that people can take the break to fill out more questions. So can I check with Jaime? Jaime, are you there?
Yes. Can you see my presentation?
Not yet, but I guess we are about to do it. On the meantime, I'm going to introduce yourself. So Jaime Jaime Sotillo Tapias is the today's flight watch and slot manager and operational analysis manager in Iberia. He's an aeronautical engineer by the University of Madrid, and before that, he's been in many different places in Iberia, manager tactical planning and operation performance. And where I met him, or where we enjoy his expertise in EASA, was during his time as a fuel efficiency specialist and manager in Iberia. Before that, he was part of the 350, and you see his first page here. He was part of was the project manager for the entry into service of this wonderful machine, the A350. And before that, he was also in the operational control. As I said, he's an engineer in the Spanish University of Madrid. And now he's going to give us a presentation of contingency fuel, how it's used in Iberia. So Jaime Sotillo, welcome. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Francisco. As Francisco says, today I'm going to share a brief presentation regarding one particular initiative from our fuel efficiency plan, which is the optimization of the contingency fuel planning. As we all know, there are different ways of calculating the contingency fuel. Traditionally, 5% of the trip, but the regulations enable to move from this 5% to different ways, as you can see here in AMC's Kate OPay MPA 181. You can see we can use the 3%, the statistical contingency fuel, or the reclearance procedure or reduced contingency fuel procedure. In Iberia, we have been using the 3% for a long time, and recently we have moved to what we say a dual kind of dispatch, depending on the flights, and we start using a statistical contingency fuel method, which has taken a little bit to implement, and the standard reduced contingency fuel procedure. So to start with, reduced contingency fuel is a well-known way of calculating the contingency fuel. The main reason we have started to use this RSF is because we realized that our flights were consuming or burning that requires. That's why we started to plan all our inbound flights to Madrid. As you can see here, currently 29 the origin, or let's say destination flights, origin South America or America to Madrid, and we are performing a reduced contingency flight. At this moment, the rate in the last year is like around 90% of the flights has been planned with reduced contingency fuel. But some days this is not possible due to weather, due to meteo, due to the aerodromes availability, and only around 7% of the flights has been planned with 3% ERA. To do that, we have performed specific training for our dispatchers, because we think this is crucial. We have also performed a specific communication for our technical crew, because we know that we are reducing the contingency, but we have to be extremely conservative. I mean, what we do not want is to increase the discretionary fuel because of that. So we know that some days we will not perform the RSF. We will perform the traditionally 3% ERA or 5%, no problems. Some days are not the days to save fuel. So this is the first contingency fuel policy we float, reduce contingency fuel in flights inbound Madrid. Additionally, in recent we started with a statistical contingency procedure This was approved by our regulator, which is EASA, the Spanish regulator, in October last year, and we performed our first flight in November last year. Statistical contingency fuel is more complex than reduced contingency fuel because we need to work or to develop a statistical contingency fuel model that requires a lot of statistical data, high fuel data quality, 2 years to make the sample of flights relevant. We have to define which flights are more relevant because recent flights weighs more than flights in 2 years ago. This kind of thing. We have to take into account the seasonality. It's not the same a flight departing in January than departing in July. This kind of things. It's not the same, although arriving at the same station, the morning flight of the afternoon flights. So all these things has been worked out in the algorithm, and we have been around 1 year analyzing the data to see if it makes sense for us. Additionally, we have to work on the solution. The model is fine, it's okay, but we have to make the interfaces with our flight planning system. In our case, is Sabre, and it's been a little bit tough, but finally we have achieved the full integration, and it's working properly. And the final steps is to get the approval from our regulator. We have had several meetings with them. We have presented all the calculations, all the algorithm. We have also to perform a safety analysis. We have to include all this information in our operational manual, and it will take around 3 months in our case to get the approval. And additionally, same way as reduced contingency fuel, we have to train our dispatchers and we have to train our flight crew. So this is more or less the way we have started to implement the statistical contingency fuel. In our case, in flights departing from Madrid, flights outbound Madrid, we have grouped all our destinations to implement this gradually. We have gone around 1 destination per week because we know the change is big in our crew. So we have worked a lot in the communication to explain the crew the difference between the traditionally contingency fuel policy. There are different percentiles in case you want to be more conservative or less conservative, depending on the weather condition. And this is something that has to be very clear, not only for our flight technical crew, but also for our flight watch team. And finally, for us, the more important thing to take into consideration, we have to focus on 3 phases in the pre-flight planning. It is very important to have an accurate field planning to avoid diversion. We do not want diversions due to lack of fuel. That's why some days we have to increase the percentile in case of statistical contingency fuel, or in case of reduced contingency fuel, we have to don't do reduced contingency fuel. This is something that we have clear. This is more or less the crucial, because if not, our crews will start increasing our discretionary fuel, and this is something that we do not want. Additionally, we've got a flight watch monitoring team, which is working 24 hours. They are working on, they are having a complex alert system, because they monitor the fuel consumption in real time. They are ready to replan if required. We have continuous communication via ACAS, SATCOM, or HF with our crew, and it's working fine. And the last thing is which is also crucial, is the post-flight analysis. We have a team dedicated to analyze all the data, to redefine the statistical contingency fuel values, to update the values, to maintain the model, and this is the way we are working. By doing so, we have achieved to reduce the fuel on board and the CO2 emissions with an equivalent level of safety in terms of minimum fuel and minimum and Mayday declaration. I mean, it's working pretty fine, but we need resources and we need a team behind it.
Thank you very much, Jaime. Wonderful. And thank you very much for all the overview and the savings that, you know, and that data that is, you know, to make us aware about the potential savings of this. And I think you have teach a good lesson to the industry here. So we have now a break for 10 minutes. We just opened the questions, again, the Q&A, so you can populate Q&As because we're going to have a full hour at 5 past. Regarding this matter, I'm going to start just slightly before 05, so we will start at 03 past, 04 past, because I want to make an introduction of the group and the safety promotion task 097, which is this task is managing from 2023, will manage all the activities related to fuel. So thank you very much. See you guys at around 3:03. So 3:03 Central European Time, 2:03 at UK time. Thank you very much. See you in a few minutes. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the workshop, to the webinar. Just before continuing and introducing a full hour of questions and answers with the panelists, I want to give you a quick overview of the safety promotion regarding fuel. You know, we started and we asked for nomination last year for the safety promotion task 0097. You can find this task in the EPAS 2023-2025 Volume 2. And here you can identify this promotion of new European provisions on fuel and energy planning and management. This safety promotion task is run or is conducted by a task force. The task force, all of the members today are part of this task force. These guys or these people were nominated by the EuropeSTEP, the FSTEC, and other EASA advisory bodies. So it followed kind of a regulatory process, and it's very transparent. And let's say we wanted the transparency and the legitimacy, the necessary legitimacy to represent the industry, because some of the tasks that we having with them are to develop and publish an EASA fuel scheme manual, a fuel manual. You know, in the regulation, there are several references to the EASA manual, and therefore we need to publish a new EASA manual. We will run with them workshops and events when we mean this, for example, these webinars and other that we do. And then safety promotion leaflets, online material and video that we are planning. We have a very busy already, unfortunately. I mean, we had the other day a meeting last week in preparation to this webinar and to have an overview of the work activities that we need to do, and it's really packed already. And we are just at the beginning of 2023, and I think we have worked for at least 1.5 years. So we'll see how we get on with the videos, online material, etc. They also advise EASA on possible regulatory updates or small mistakes that we may have. Thanks to them, we're going to publish in July an update on editorial amendments. For example, CATO PMPA 182, the AMC 8 and the AMC 9 has some asterisks that are not appropriate, with 2 asterisks talking about in one of the lines about 2 aerodromes, when that line is only talking about one aerodrome. So there are some editorials that we will improve thanks to the work of this group. And as I said, the first deliverable will be in July this year, and we will have an update on the regulation. I'm providing the names. We are updating the EASA website on fuel. There's in the ops community, John is updating this website. Maybe tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, we will have an update. Tomorrow we will have the update in which in that website we will have the names. It's in a different format. It's in the formal. We have a specific format in EASA to appoint experts working for EASA. And these are the names. So whenever your authority or EASA is not listening to you, you can, you have those names, especially if you are a member of IATA, and IATA has 2 different members. Maybe you can go to Stefano Prola or inside IATA and contact Spencer or Thomas in order to address certain regulatory wrong reference interpretations that you may have problems with your authority. In fact, Thomas has provided already the first kind of regulatory updates or clarifications that we need to do thanks to collecting this data from IATA. I am saying the same for, I don't know if the Spanish people that are attending, you guys have 2 representatives. They both nominated by the authority, but of course, Gabriel Arroyo is from the authority itself, and Jaime, as you saw, is from Iberia. So he's an industry member and also related to IATA. So whenever you feel like, nobody's listening to you, or you are not able to pass the message to EASA, please, you have these people here that could serve you as a bridge to contact us. Without further delay, thank you very much. I will initiate the panel discussions. I'm going to start here introducing the panel discussions, the people that we are here in EASA. First of all, we have Eric Bennett. Eric is our expert on helicopters. He developed all the regulatory references in the fuel schemes to helicopters. I don't know, John, if we have questions for helicopters or participants on the helicopter side.
We have some participants, but not any questions yet.
Okay, so people from the helicopter industry, please try to make now the question, because Eric is here and I don't know for how long he could be here.
We have one on seaplanes, if that helps.
Okay, well, we'll see. Then I have Francisco with me as well here on my left side. Is already introduced, is the chair of the rulemaking group. And then I'm going to stop sharing and introduce the rest of the panelists. I'm going to start with Gabriel. Gabriel from the Spanish Authority. Hello, can you hear us?
Hello, good afternoon, everybody.
Hello, I see you in the office, so welcome, Gabriel. How is the weather in Madrid? Is fine?
It's fine. It's a little bit too hot, perhaps, for this time of the year.
I see you with no jacket and everything. I said it must be hot in Madrid. So yeah, welcome, Gabriel. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Jaime from Iberia, I guess you are already introduced, so thank you for being here. Peter from Tui, you are here as well. You are in London, no, Peter?
Yes, right now in Luton.
And how is the weather? It's better than Madrid? I don't think so, no?
British.
Yeah, British weather. I was Spencer, welcome from London as well. How is? I think you are in the office. I think you are in Heathrow. How is the weather there?
I'm at Heathrow. The weather is raining and grey. Yeah. British.
Okay, great. Is the operation running smoothly today in Heathrow?
As good as it can be. Yes.
Thank you. Welcome, Spencer. Thomas, welcome. Thomas is already a well-known expert. He was participating with us in the last webinar. Thomas, I think you are in Switzerland, no? Welcome.
That's correct. Yes, I'm in Zurich. And to pre-go your question, the weather is fine here. We have high clouds, a little colder than we would expect, but it's very nice.
How is the implementation of the fuel schemes? I think Lufthansa is coming into force today. I think How is the implementation of the fuel schemes there in the Lufthansa Group and specifically in Swiss?
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, that's true. We had a first group of airlines in the Lufthansa Group that changed over in October, November. I mean, just with the date. And the second group of the airlines made the cutover this last night. From what I've heard, it runs smoothly with some very small hiccups. And now let's look what the next week shows. You know, once you really go to run it and you get your first feedbacks from pilots and dispatches, that's when you realize where these things lie, which you might have overseen. But it looks very good with just one AOC missing within our group from around 11 to 12 AOCs that will make the changeover shortly.
Thank you, Thomas. And finally, Ryan, I think you are in the States, Ryan. Ryan is from a flight planning provider, not NavBlue. So if you guys have questions regarding flight planning, etc., and Ryan can help us today in the questions. Ryan, I think you are in the US, correct?
Yes, hopefully you guys can hear me just fine. I'm based out of Detroit, Michigan. So it's early morning for me, but everything's going well here. Everything's going well with NavBlue. I'm happy to answer any questions from the flight planning side.
Thank you, Ryan, and welcome. So I give the floor to John to provide with the questions, and then we kick in.
So what I'll do is I'll ask the questions rather than put them on screen.
Okay.
It's better that everybody can see the panelists better rather than just a full screen of questions. So the first question from Francesca is, how do you mitigate an in-flight malfunction of aircraft communication capabilities, such as an ACARS failure, for an aircraft flying under reduced contingency fuel?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. I think, Peter, I think you're going to be the best, well located to address this question. So you guys know, and let me give a short summary of the variation. So some of the variations of fuel scheme variations requires, for example, flight monitoring. And for example, flight monitoring requires two-way communication between flight crew and the OCC. So the question is related, what if in the middle of the flight, I don't know if it's in the middle of the flight or a planning stage. Let's assume that it's in the middle of the flight. You have a problem with the communication. Obviously, from a regulatory point of view, and I am talking very legalistic here, this is going to be managed as a captain and as a flight crew, because it's something that happened during the flight, and we are not mandating at any point that you need to divert or whatever. So that's from a regulatory point of view what I wanted to say. Anything else on the regulatory, or we give the floor to the industry? Okay, so we're going to give the floor to the industry. I don't know if Peter, Thomas, up to you guys. I see that Thomas, Ryan, and Peter can answer. I will start in order. I'm going to give first the floor to Thomas, just because it's in my list, is in order, then to Peter, and then to Ryan. So Thomas, go ahead with the question.
Yeah, I just don't want to take the hot potato from Peter. That's why I raised my hand.
Okay, so then I give
appreciate that.
No, actually,
let's give the floor then to Peter, and then you reply.
No, let me just give a short introduction, then we give it to Peter. Why is that? Because, as a pilot, I think I should be the first to answer here. It's an in-flight malfunction we're talking about, and the communication is interrupted. So, there is very little means Peter can do for me right now at this point as a chief dispatcher or whatever. I'm up there on my own. So the short answer from my side would be, this is an in-flight situation. It is about in-flight management, and it's about my contingency procedures I do have as a cockpit crew there. I have fuel. I have maybe a weather, which might be outdated, but I still have the ATC. So for me as a pilot, the first thought that comes into my mind is, as Francesco said in the beginning, is the safe landing at an aerodrome with safe operational situations. So this would be my focus. And as I don't have communication with my back office, my range of opportunities is basically ATC around me, which restricts me to about 2 hours, or about the information ATC can give me ahead, giving me, TAFs, METARs, which is possible. We have a lot of possibilities to get weather, not via ACARS or SATCOM, but through other means. So this would just be my pilot perspective. And now let's see what Peter from the ground could do for me when I'm in this trouble up there.
Thank you. Very nice. Yeah, it's true. So, Peter, go ahead, and then we will go with Ryan, and then we will close here in EASA. Peter.
Actually, that was, well, there is very little that we can do to help you. There are some means that we can use, but obviously we have to distinguish if it is an in-flight issue or if it is in planning phase. Obviously, if it is in planning phase, you have to treat the thing completely different. But nevertheless, even in flight, there are some possibilities that you can help out a crew. I mean, remember that, I don't know if it's still watched or monitored or it is in the procedure of the company, but we still have Stockholm radio. It sounds horrible sometimes, but there is a possibility via a relay station to contact with an aircraft if it is properly equipped and the frequency of Stockholm radio is monitored. Another solution would be calling the ATC units, and then if it is really like an emergency or something like that, there is a possibility to contact, but I would expect in this case airmanship to be the #1 thing to go for.
Yeah, absolutely. Airmanship is key on this matter. As I said in the regulation, we don't say exactly what to do. We are expecting this captain decision, and you can continue to destination provided that you comply with the CATOP and PA 185, so you know your weather, and you can facilitate the information to destination. Ryan, I don't know if you want to say something on regards to flight planning.
Oh yeah, and I'm so happy to see the alignment here. One of the things that's unique to me in my position is I'm an FAA certified 121 dispatcher, 15 years dispatching under the FAA. So it's interesting to me when I see the differences between EASA and FAA, and this is not different. This is absolutely what Peter said, and what was said before that was exactly in line with what I was going to say. It depends on phase of flight. If it's planning phase, then yeah, it's completely different. Then we have to take different things into account. But if you have dispatched the flight and it is actively operating on plan, and all you have is a communication disruption, as Peter said, you can do a phone patch, either initiated from the flight deck or from ops, or you continue on with airmanship. What was the plan? Has the plan changed materially? Or is everything else fine? It's just I lost a radio. Then I trust the crew members to make the decisions they need to make. And there's not a need to divert immediately. Your fuel requirements don't necessarily have to change. It's up to your airline and what your policies and procedures are in that tactical moment.
Correct. Chair of the rulemaking task? I have nothing to add. Okay, thank you very much. So I think the answer is properly addressed. It was Francesca, no?
Yeah.
Okay, so we can pass on to the next question.
So the next one from David Friedman from Condor and Silver Cloud Air. What happens if planning to an AD with an aerodrome, I assume, with only VOR approaches? Can the alternate be based on VOR only too?
So this question needs to go, no?
Yes, in case of any questions, email will be the best way out.
Okay, thank you very much. Ciao. So this is regarding CATOP and PA 182, and I think it's paragraph 4 struck. So I'm going to display the regulation on the meantime. Give me 1 second. So let me share with you the screen to answer this question. So here in CATOP PMPA 182 FOSTRUCT, it's not specifically about VOR, but it says for each IFR flight, the operator shall ensure that sufficient means are available to navigate to land at destination aerodrome or at any destination alternate aerodrome in the event of loss of capability for the intended approach and landing operation. What we want to say here, and this can be used interpreted in many different ways, is to avoid a single point of failure. So how this is reflected into the AMCs? The AMCs are reflected, give me 1 second because it's 182 FOSTRUCT. So Here it is. So the reflection of this is here, and is regarding PBN operation and operational credit, not specifically to a VOR. Of course, the idea of the VOR, if you have only one VOR in the aircraft, and you have, but it's not related to the VOR. What we translate this is to the PBN operation, because you can have a GNSS jamming. And what we say is that if you use GNS in destination, then you shouldn't use as a primary approach procedure for the destination. And the same with operational credit. If you have an EFBS and you have only one EFBS and you have a problem in destination, then you cannot use the EFBS and use it as a primary field, as a primary means to the alternate. So the reflection of paragraph Foxtrot is only on regards to PBN operation and to operational credits. It's not addressed on the ILS, not directly addressed to the VOR, so you could use two VORs because we understand that you have more than one VOR. Exactly.
Those are.
And then, if you want, Francesco, I don't know if you want.
Yeah, I mean, basically the question is related specifically to the VOR, and the VORs are, of course, individual VORs stations at the two
correct
aerodromes. Of course, if the same VOR then serves two aerodromes closely located, then this is an issue, let's say. The point is that the equipment of the aircraft is covered by MELs on the minimum equipment list. So if you have two VORs at dispatch, you can have a VOR predicated landing option.
Otherwise, and the same with the ILS.
Indeed, the same. So this was intended to cover, as you said, the PBN, because when you rely on GNSS, GNSS, then of course there could be a single point of failure where the GNSS outage covers also the both destination and alternates.
Correct. The same happens with the EFPS. The EFPS normally only have one. There's only one EFPS equipment in the aircraft, and Enhanced Flight Vision System, the infrared cameras, only have one. Then they have one in the head-up display and a camera screen in the cockpit for the first officers. Sometimes they have two head-up display, but they belong to the same equipment, let's say. So a problem in the infrared camera, it will imply that you cannot land neither in destination, neither in the alternate. So therefore, that's why the operational credits are also embedded there. And we will see if we see another technology in the future. I don't know, for example, remote towers, you know, and in the future we have remote towers, and in the remote tower scenarios, there's a destination and an alternate that, although currently is not allowed to file a flight plan with both towers as remote towers. But if in the future that changes, then we will need to address whatever single point of failure in terms of navigation means here in the AMC1 or NMC2 cut-off PMPA 182 phosphor. I don't know. I think Spencer, you guys in the Airline International Group, I'm talking about the whole constellation of airlines that you guys have. I think you, for VOR and VOR or ILS and ILS, you guys all file, let's say, the same kind of, there's no restriction on this matter, correct?
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah, absolutely right.
Okay, thank you. So we move to the next question, and I pass the floor to John.
Okay, so for the next question, we have from Anonymous. Regarding AMC Cat OPA MPA 182 C2, the ceiling is at least 2,000. Sorry. We had a small glitch there.
One second, because we are having a technical problem here.
Okay, there we go. Now we fixed it. Regarding AMC2 Cat OPA MPA 182 C2, the ceiling is at least 2,000 feet or the circling height 500 feet, whichever is greater. Shouldn't that be 500 feet above circling?
Okay, give me 1 second, because I'm going to display the AMC2. So give me 1 second. Where it is here. Let's go to the AMC2, cut-off PMPA Charlie 2. so everybody can see it. So I hope, I think it's visible. This is the AMC2, and we are talking about basic fuel scheme destination alternate aerodrome. And to be more specifically, Charlie, the operator, may operate with no destination, provided that two conditions are met: 6 hours or 4 hours in case of in-flight replanning. And by the way, we have an editorial mistake in the GM1 cut-off PMPA 185 because it refers to 6 hours when it should refers to 4 hours. We will fix it in July. And then we are talking about Charlie 2. Two separated runways are usable at the destination aerodrome, and the appropriate weather 1 hour before, 1 hour after says that the ceiling is 2,000 feet or the circling height plus 500 feet, whichever is greater on the ground visibility 500. I think here, or the circling height 500 feet, and I don't know if we need to say if we have an editorial mistake here as well. So what do you think, Francesco?
I think we need to take a look at it after.
Anybody has implemented this regulation, Spencer? Or
I think this should read plus 500 feet.
Yes.
I think that was the intention.
I think so too. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
I
so too.
think we
The
lost,
old rules for no alternate planning, it was always circling plus 500. So I think it is there's the plus missing there.
Yeah, we miss a plus and it was a mistake. Yeah. So I will take it on board, and then let's see if in July we can fix it and just put circling height plus, just a symbol that I think is missing, and that is clearly an editorial mistake that we will be able to fix soon in July. It's going to be a direct publication into the regulation. So we will take it on board to the SPT 0097 as we discussed the other day, all the editorials, and I will try to introduce this new editorial in the new ED decision.
But I think that maybe we can have the reassurance from the planning data or the planning people that are that Lido or
exactly, because Ryan, I don't know if we're gonna put you in the spotlight here, Ryan.
That's fine.
Yeah,
I don't mind the spotlight.
In NavBlue, I think you have algorithms about this, and you have been implementing this for a long time. I think you guys are implementing this in the way that is 2,000 feet or the circling height plus 500 feet,
plus,
correct?
Yes.
It's your algorithms as well. Okay. We didn't have today Lido, but probably Lido is doing the same. I don't know if, Okay, so I will address this matter soon. So, and let's see if in July we can have another chance. Can I ask you, John, about we have more questions and we will address more questions, but can you give me an update on the survey? How many people did we have?
38.
So we have 38 people on the survey. I don't know, and this is up to Nuria and the guys in Barcelona. I don't know if you guys, at the end of the webinar, you guys want to make some insights or you want to wait, because we can, maintain the survey for some time after the webinar, maybe 1 hour more or 2 hours more. Nuria, I don't know if you want to do some, at the end of the meeting, you want to do some updates on the survey and provide some initial data.
Francisco, thanks for the opportunity. I think that due to the nature of the questions, it's maybe better to digest them before presenting results. They were quite
no problem. No problem.
But
so we will, then Nuria, what we will do is that at the end of the, in a couple of days, we will update some information about the survey in 1 week or so, and we will update there. Okay, perfect. So we have already 38 respondents. Please keep answering, because, the more we have, the better. We had at the beginning more than 260 people live, so at least we just passed the 10% of answers, but if we can reach maybe the 20% or the 20% or 25%, that will be appreciated. Thank you very much. So we go back to
Francisco.
the questions. Yeah, go ahead, Thomas.
just to make sure, maybe I'm the only one, but I don't have access to the poll anymore. So I don't know if that's only me or.
No, it's just because we've got the questions on the screen. So when we finish the questions, we can leave the poll running afterwards for a few days.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
and then when we finish, we'll activate the polls again at the end.
Okay. Yeah, it's because
Understood.
we are now. I didn't know. You see, the technical matters. Apparently, when we are answering questions, we cannot run both things at the same time.
I keep the poll running till this time next week.
Yeah.
So then we have it going.
Okay, so let's continue with the questions, John. I think this question is for Iberia, the next question. So Jaime, be prepared. So John, the floor is yours.
How do you analyze the SCF? SCF? What's the SCF?
Statistical contingency fuel.
That's it. What are the inputs taken into account from post-flight analysis? Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, and Jaime was very involved in this matter. The problem is that it's been a long time, so I don't know if Jaime is going to be able to answer like on the spot some of the information. Jaime, the floor is yours. Welcome again.
Yes, I think so. What we do is we compare. I mean, we and we go deep into the big deviations. Obviously, we do not analyze every flight. So what we do is we compare the plan data from our OFP compared to the actual data, and the actual data we take from the ACARS technical logbook or from the FDM, and with all this data we analyze deviations in flight levels, deviations. For instance, imagine that there's been a holding near the airport. I mean, we try to look what is the reason behind the additional or the non-expected consumption. And with all this information, we try to analyze if this is something for a particular flight, or is something that can be generalized for a particular time frame, or this kind of things. But to sum up, plan versus actual, important to have the FDM data, because you can see the actual flight levels versus the flight the planned flight levels, and analysis.
Thank you very much, Jaime. How many people, because you are in another department, but how many people you have in the fuel efficiency department, or call it whatever you like, on the fuel efficiency department? How many people?
At this moment, yes, at this moment we've got a fuel efficiency manager. Additionally, and we've got an engineer in our technical office, flight ops technical office, which is dealing with these things. We've got also particular software applications which help us to perform this analysis.
Thank you, Jaime. I want to give the floor to Spencer Norton, because you guys also have implemented a statistical contingency fuel for some time. Spencer, can you give us how you analyze the statistical contingency fuel and the input taken from the post-flight analysis? The same question, but addressed to you,
yes,
Spencer.
Sure. So we use FDR data to look at to what the flight burnt during the flight, and we normalize that for additional weight. So if the flight was heavier than the flight plan, or the crew put in some discretionary fuel, we normalize that back to normal, so we can see exactly what the flight would have burned had the extra fuel not been on there. And once we've done that, we look at every 100 sectors of that flight, and we renew that over a period of 100 sectors. So every 100 sectors coming in, the data is being completely renewed. So we take into consideration the different seasons as well. And I think the real important point with statistical contingency fuel is if we look at normal contingency fuel, the 3%, the 5%, or the 20 minutes, that is really quoted for unforeseen circumstances. But if you look at statistical contingency fuel, that is more considered for known statistical circumstances. So actually it gives the crew a lot more confidence in the fuel that they're going to take in terms of discretionary fuel, because they know there's some statistics behind how much fuel we're giving them. And that's the real benefit of it.
Thank you very much. And how many people you guys, just to make aware the other operators, the amount of work that it requires?
So within my So within my team, there's myself, and I've got 3 engineers as well that look at all that data.
Yeah, thank you very much. Another important point that I want to say about the statistical contingency fuel that we suggesting and we suggest you to implement is that the statistical contingency fuel is kind of a mini individual fuel scheme. Many of the processes necessary for the in-flight fuel management, for the individual fuel schemes are, let's say, kind of embedded, and it gives you this work pattern and this work logic to be able to implement individual fuel schemes, because individual fuel schemes are relying on data, on key point indicators. For example, 2 years, we say in the individual fuel schemes, like in the contingency fuel. So then, this idea of the season. So many of the processes and many of the culture that the organization needs to build on the statistical contingency fuel is also valid for the individual fuel scheme. So we think it's a good way to slowly get you into the system of individual fuel scheme. Francesco, anything else?
No, said it all.
Okay, thank you very much. So we're going to continue with another question. So back to you. I think it's from Valerio that. Valerio has been waiting for a long time.
Here we go.
So
Valerio, here we
stay
go.
with us.
To apply a basic fuel scheme with variation, is it correct to apply only the AMC of the variation?
Thank you very much. To apply a basic fuel scheme with variation, it is correct to apply only the AMC of the variation. Well, again, it will depend on this matter. There are certain variations that could replace the basic fuel scheme, let's say, but there are others, like we discussed with Peter, that if you lose the flight monitoring, maybe you want to still keep the AMC6, so the basic fuel scheme, in order to be able to transfer, to go back from a full back from the variation to the basic fuel scheme. Imagine that you lose flight monitoring capability and then you go for that. But also in the individual fuel scheme, no, Francesco, what do you think? If I am having an individual fuel scheme, can I rely only on an individual fuel scheme?
First, it's very difficult to implement. Maybe Spencer can complement what I'm saying. A full individual scheme for all the sectors that you have. Imagine you start a new sector, okay? You don't have the data to support an individual fuel scheme on that sector. Therefore, you need to have a basic fuel scheme to start with, at least. And then, of course, the one with variation is much easier to implement, because also we granted this credit of the previous fuel regulation, I say. But again, the fallback option is a very relevant factor to take into account. I don't know, Spencer, in British Airways, you have all the 3 schemes together, I guess.
We do in a way, but I think the intent when we wrote the regulation was that the individual fuel scheme was going to be used for very specific items.
Yes.
It's not a general overall. You probably stay with the basic with variations, and then you use the individual fuel scheme for very specific items that you want to use that rule for.
Yeah, exactly. And also, from the presentation from Iberia, we understand that going westwards to let's say a more problematic area in terms of facilities and infrastructure, you are more conservative than coming back to Europe. So you may have the basic fuel scheme going one way and have a variation coming back.
Yes, absolutely.
Or an individual coming back.
Jaime, can you complement this idea?
Yes, that's completely true. But in our case, we use reduced contingency fuel in inbound flights because of Madrid situation in the middle of Spain, and also because of the alternative route. I mean, it's very difficult to perform reduced contingency fuel the west coast of airports. So there is the ocean. So we have to perform statistical contingency fuel. That's why, to make it simple for our crew, we have decided to perform reduced contingency fuel in a way and statistical contingency fuel in the other way.
Thank you very much, Jaime. One element that food for thought for all of us, and the reliance that it will come more and more on the OCC, is that you know, with all these policies, it's very difficult for a regular pilot, and I am a regular pilot myself, and when I need to fly on that day, to have many different policies is difficult for the pilots. We need to rely first on training and secondly on the OCC. And you see the importance that is more and more is having an operational control center. We are building rules around the operational control center and giving variations and giving more efficiency rules for those that have an OCC. So I don't know if there's managers here on the operator side, but invest in the OCC because it will pay off. You will have access to variation, etc. In addition, we are having a new rulemaking task on 0392 that we're going to publish soon, very soon. It's a matter of days. Probably on the 31st, we will publish on Friday. We will publish an NPI, a Notice of Proposal Amendment on Rulemaking Task 0392, Working Package 2. And again, it's probably going to be on Friday this week or in the next week, in which we're going to implement or we're going to propose new rules around the flight dispatchers, around the OCC. Keep it tuned. Try to comment these new rules that are coming, because the OCC, due to the complexity of the fuel rules, not only fuel rules, but also all weather operation rules, in order to make much more efficient operations, is making that the pilots, we are having a much more complex environment, much more complex policies, and we rely on the OCC, on the flight plan, computerized flight plan, on the EFB, on the electronic flight bags, to perform our job appropriately. So I think if there's managers here, the regulation and the way, the wave of the coming years is going to go towards that direction, more reliance on the OCC and better. So this is a very interesting question, Valerio. Sorry for being so late in answering that, but it was a very relevant topic. So John, the floor is yours. Back again to the questions.
Okay, for the next question to EASA, is there a flight monitoring requirement for the operators in addition with the flight tracking function? So we, well, it's anonymous, so I don't know this person, but remember that we had a presentation on the first webinar back in July. There's a very interesting presentation from Airbus, from Alexander Adel, explaining these capabilities, and we discuss because this is a flight planning, let's say, capacity that is necessary for certain operations, and we explain all these matters. I can show very briefly. Maybe you can do a photo, or well, just for later on. We can show you here. The capabilities of the three schemes of the capabilities of flight following, flight monitoring, and flight watch. You have here, some primary requirements, and then here in the next page, you have, more. The necessary capabilities, talking about the additional communication, and I think this was mostly about the additional communication. Here you have the requirements. Again, this video is recorded and it is available, and you can also submit to the first webinar, in which Alex Adel has provided a full explanation of this matter. Well, okay, that's it. So with these two, maybe you can do some pictures now and then get to the webinar on July 2022. Okay, John. I don't know if Peter. Yeah, Ryan has raised a hand, so maybe Ryan wants to complement. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to go back to that last question to make sure that I understood properly. The question about, if we have approval for schemas with variations or even individual schemas, can we fall back? And the way that NavBlue has interpreted this based on the previous discussions was that the operator can go up to the level they are approved, but can always fall back. If I'm approved for basic with variations, but the conditions of the day or whatever have me where I'm considering the minima for the basic schema for whatever reason, that does not mean I have to use the basic schema for fuel. I can still, as long as I meet the requirements, use the reduced fuel requirements, even if I, for whatever reason, have to use the higher minima, or vice versa. It's our understanding that they are not connected one-to-one, that it is the operator can choose whatever they have approval for. Is that an accurate understanding?
Yeah, more or less, you know, as you said, the fuel schemes, not all the fuel schemes require flight monitoring, and not all the fuel scheme with variations, again, requires flight monitoring. And depending on the conditions, then the flight monitoring has several requirements in its own. And then depending on the day of operation and the conditions on the actual flight, you may or may not need to full back. I think it's important to have always a backup plan, but we will need to look at but you said correct.
Okay,
the principle is correct.
The principle is correct.
The reason I asked is we recently had a webinar, just NavBlue and the NavBlue operators in Europe, and this was one of the questions that came up. And we've left it very flexible. The system does automatic fallback, kind of starting at best case scenario and working its way down. And I just wanted to make sure that our operators were set up for success. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's correct. In principle, it's correct. Yes. I don't know if anybody, please raise any of the participants on the panelist. Please raise your hand if we are saying something stupid. And if we agree, then we can move on to the next question.
Sounds good.
Francisco?
Yes, thank you.
Thomas, go ahead.
Yeah, I had the hand raised not because you said something stupid. I hope I can raise it anyways. I hope you don't mind. No, what I wanted to say is, after the few questions that we had towards this topic, I think as an SPT, we should take this topic with us and maybe make some, maybe for the next webinar, have a short presentation, more detailed, maybe on what do we mean, what are these interfaces.
Okay.
I think we should think about it.
We're gonna introduce. I don't know if we should introduce in the work plan. Definitely in the work plan, but I don't know if in your, in the Excel, in the table that you provide about clarifications, a small clarification. Maybe we need to address this matter. We're gonna meet again in April, and then we will try to do the best we can on this matter. Yeah. Okay, John. The next question, because I think we don't have much more time. Eh?
No, we have.
We have 6 minutes left.
Okay, so the question is in two parts. So I'll highlight the first part and then read on to the second part. So the two safe landing options may not be available since AMC5 CAT OPA MPA 110B limits the runway visual range to 1,500 meters. The operator under CAT OP MPA 110A has a responsibility to establish aerodrome operating minima, but this is missed by the operators. Will EASA make this requirement more explicit?
But I don't understand, Francisco, I don't understand why the RVR has its limits to 1,500. Some of them are limited to 1,500 and some of them, they are not. So can you display the question full there, because it's difficult. And maybe, I don't know if the anonymous could make their name in case we need to ask him and
there is there. The two safe landing options may not be available since. But then the second part of the question is there, one below.
Oh, okay, I see. So two safe landing options, maybe no.
Yeah, here this is where category A and B airplanes are this terminal conjugate is rated at 1,500 meters. So the determination of the RVR. So I don't understand the link. So.
But I don't understand the link either. Because one thing is that you determine the category, the RVR minimum, which is fine in accordance to CAT OP MPA 110. And then when you have established your minima, which for category Alpha and Bravo, in accordance to Alpha, is greater than the maximum RVR that you can use is 1,500. You don't need to go further than 1,500 according to Bravo. And this is a good thing for the operator, that when you are category A and B, the greater you can use potentially, if you want, 1,500, even if the table says that it should be higher than 2,000. Yeah. But because you are a small aircraft, you are allowed to use an RVR which is kind of low. And you can use this in destination, and then in your alternate, you can use another thing. But I don't understand the relationship. So if that anonymous person wants to intervene, let us know, write us back, because
I was looking in the chat there, there's nothing yet.
As an anonymous, we cannot identify it. So we move on. Yeah.
Okay, move on to the next question. Okay. So the next one is another one from Valerio. Is the fuel consumption monitoring system Guidance Material 1, CAT-OP MPA 101 related to flight monitoring when applying only AMC for fuel ERA?
Okay, I mean, I think this is interesting also for the people in the research. The fuel consumption monitoring system is completely different from the flight monitoring capabilities on the OCC. There are certain variations that require flight monitoring and fuel consumption monitoring system, or maybe there are other variations, and generally the individual fuel scheme that may only require fuel consumption monitoring program or fuel consumption monitoring system. So the flight monitoring capabilities of the OCC and the fuel consumption monitoring system are completely two different capabilities. The AMC is related to CAT-OP MPA 182, so aerodrome selection. Normally, some of them requires flight monitoring capabilities in the OCC. Why? Because the OCC needs to be able to assess the different alternates, and then the variations related to CAT-OP MPA 182 in flight planning. So calculations of the fuel, and be very detailed on the fuel calculation. Then it requires a fuel consumption monitoring program or monitoring system, whatever. And you could see that some of the variations describe, some of the contingency variations that was described by Iberia, some of them requires a fuel consumption monitoring program. And I think one of them is the statistical contingency fuel, if I remember well, that requires a fuel consumption monitoring system in order to implement that. While the statistical contingency fuel does not require flight monitoring OCC capability on that regard. Francesco, I don't know.
So, I mean, regarding, I think it's correct here. This GM is addressing in details the fuel consumption monitoring system. So wherever it is required, this GM can be applied and is applicable.
Correct. While the flight monitoring is in the definitions, and it's another different capability, which is not related. I don't know, guys, any of you, let me check the panelists if have raised their hand. Okay, no. Yeah, Valerie is saying thank you, and I hope it's clear. So I think we need to go to the last question, probably, no?
Okay, the next question. Oh, it's a two-part question from David. Concerning flight monitoring, I'll highlight the first one. Concerning flight monitoring, are single flights permitted with, for example, inoperative SATCOM or data link? If allowed by the MEL, or do we have to revert to traditional planning for a single flight that does not fill the technical requirements? So obviously we already talked about the communications failure in flight is what happens if, just before the flight it's identified, do you then have to scrub all of that and start again?
I mean, the regulation doesn't particularly address this matter. I don't know if the SPT 0097 should provide guidance on this matter. It makes sense that when you don't have communication with your OCC, maybe the flight monitoring is not available, and then that the variation may not be available. But I give the floor. I don't know. Thomas hasn't raised the hand, so please start yourself, Thomas.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that this has been a question that has been brought forward to me also from IATA members. So I've put it in the list also, which I think would be helpful if we can provide some kind of clarification in this safety promotion manual towards it, to clarify it a little bit. I heard that's a lot of different interpretations on it. So
yeah,
it will be
because
taken
indeed,
forward.
because indeed the regulation doesn't provide a clear answer to this. We left this to the discretion of the operator. It makes sense from a risk assessment point of view to have a full back option, but we don't specifically say what happens if the communication is not there. It's difficult to say at this moment in time. It will depend on the conditions and what type of flights you are. We have Peter that has explained their full back option, in case flight monitoring is not available. Because it's true that there has to be some communication between the OCC and the flight crew in order to be able to exchange safety relevant information. And again, I refer back to the presentation from Alex Adel from Airbus on regards to this matter on July 2022, which is recorded and is available on the EASA website. So I think we need to finish here. Thank you very much to all the participants, and thank you very much to all the panelists. Unfortunately, we don't have time to make you a tricky question about football or about, like last time. So, John, I think we are just running out of time. So you have 5 minutes to provide to the latest safety promotion actions. I think you have the safety week or whatever. And,
so actually, there's a couple of key bits. So we will redo our EASA Safety Week again the week of the 30th of May, so the 30th of May to the 2nd of June, with a summer campaign, and that will all come in the coming weeks, next sort of 4 to 6 weeks. So be ready for that. The main thing I was going to mention is at the end of this week, we'll launch our new Conversation Aviation Safety magazine, which has 12 articles in it. It will be published every quarter, but one of the most important, hopefully useful parts of it is knowing that in so many organisations it takes a lot of effort to make your own safety magazines, is that we do this as a collaborative effort with as many people as we can. If you're interested to join the wider collaborative effort, feel free to email our safety promotion team or contact me on LinkedIn. But with the magazine, you'll be able to download the magazine effectively in its raw designed format and edit to use for your own safety magazines. Put your own logos on it and all of these things, as well as to have the magazine itself. So that's the main thing really to talk about at this stage. And I think other than that, if you haven't found the AirOps community site already, please type EASA AirOps community site. You can sign up with any social login, and then you get notifications when we post new things.
And we're going to post we're going to update the new fuel page on the Ops community. Yeah. You will have all the names and the official nominations of the SPT 0097, and we will also post their kind of the next working actions of this group, so you are familiar with this, and then you can contact us on this matter. Regarding the summer, as Edward, our head of department, says, it's coming a busy summer. You're going to have a lot of operational constraints. You need to have resilience. So keep training your pilots, keep a good operational control center, because this will save you a lot of trouble during the summer, which we expect to be very, very busy. We have now markets like Spain above 2019 flights. There are other markets, especially in the north, like Germany, or that are not in 2019. But as I said, there are some markets in Europe that are already going above the 2019 figures, and that means a very challenging summer with a lot of operational constraints, etc. So keep prepared and fly safe. And as I said, contact us through LinkedIn, through the EASA website for more information. Thank you very much, and we say goodbye. Ciao.
Ciao. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.